We now come to business questions. I call the shadowed Leader of the House, Chris Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Could I ask the Leader to update the House on forthcoming business?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The business for the week commencing the 28th of October includes Monday the 28th of October, general debate on remembrance and the contribution of veterans. Tuesday the 29th of October, remaining stages of the Great British Energy Bill. Wednesday the 30th of October, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, will deliver her budget statement. Thursday the 31st of October, continuation of the budget debate. Friday the 1st of November, the House will not be sitting. The provisional business for the week commencing the 4th of November will include Monday the 4th of November, continuation of the budget debate. Tuesday the 5th of November, continuation of the budget debate. Wednesday the 6th of November, conclusion of the budget debate. The House will rise for the November recess at the conclusion of business on Wednesday the 6th of November and return on Monday the 11th of November.
Crystal.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, it's rather telling that only one member opposite appears to be excited about the prospects of the budget next week. They obviously know what is coming in it. Well, Mr Speaker, let me start by congratulating Morgan Edwards on his appointment as Director of Customer Experience and Service Delivery here in Parliament. He starts his role in December. He apparently was previously employed in Legoland in Windsor. Quite why the parliamentary authorities thought somebody with experience of presiding over squabbling juveniles was well suited to work here, I really don't know. Mr Speaker, we've received the business, and I have to say, in recent weeks, the business has been a little thin. We have a general debate today. We have a general debate on Monday. We have had no less than, or no fewer than 10 days of general debate so far. Yesterday we had regulations that would ordinarily be taken in committee, and business ended early on Tuesday. Now, you expect this at the end of a government's time in office. It is a little early to be running out of steam in this government's time. At this point in the 2019 Parliament, we'd had 31 new bills introduced. We currently only have 18, and a third of those had been published previously or been consulted upon before. And those bills that are coming forward are being rushed. The Employment Bill, which had its second reading on Monday, has much of its policy deferred into regulations to be debated in committee at some point in the future, denying the full House the opportunity to properly debate these important issues. And when it comes to the winter fuel payments that we've discussed previously, we should have had the report of the Social Security Advisory Committee before we voted and debated that important measure. They have now finally written their report, and they have said that they are concerned about the take-up of pension credit. They have said the government's forecasts on fiscal savings have question marks hanging over them. They have said we need a full impact assessment, which the government didn't bother providing. And they have also called for some specific changes to those winter fuel regulations. So will the Leader bring those winter fuel payment regulations back to the House to consider again, now that we have the Social Security Advisory Committee's report, and now we know that they have recommended changes? Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister, I believe, is currently in Samoa, attending the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit. Will the Leader confirm that he will make a statement upon his return next week? Now, I understand that one of the topics under discussion is the question of reparations. Now, my view is that it is totally wrong to be demanding money, as much as £18 trillion, for sins, very serious sins, committed hundreds of years ago. Will the Leader confirm that it is her view and the government's view that it is totally wrong to entertain discussions about reparations in relation to things that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago? I believe that is the government's position. I believe the Prime Minister has ruled out even entering into discussions on that topic, quite rightly. And will the Leader confirm that remains the position of His Majesty's government? Mr Speaker, finally, I ask the Leader to organise a debate on foreign interference in elections. A very important topic that I know concerns all of us. Both sides of the House have criticised this in the past. I understand that over 100 Labour Party staffers are enjoying themselves in the United States currently in the presidential election underway. Now, ministers have claimed this is all spontaneous, all organised themselves, all paid for themselves as well. But that claim appears, if I can put it politely, grossly implausible. Now it's emerged in a now deleted social media tweet or post that the whole thing was arranged by the Labour Party's Director of Operations, Sophia Patel, who posted in this deleted post that there are, and I quote, 10 slots available for campaigning in swing state North Carolina. And she said, and I quote, "We will sort out your housing." So it looks to me like that is being organised by the Labour Party's Director of Operations. Does the leader agree that it is actually damaging to our national interest? And this is a serious point. If the governing party, the Labour Party, are organising interference or campaigning in another country's election, and it will make it difficult for His Majesty's government to deal with the newly elected administration in America if the other side wins, and that will undermine our national interest. Does she accept that by organised campaigning in this way, they are putting party interest before national interest, and will she organise that debate?
Thank you.
Please, I don't need the further comments. And I'm sure you're trying to catch my eye. It's not the best way to do it. Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I also join the Shadow Leader in welcoming Morgan Edwards to this place. I'm sure he brings great experience from Legoland that can be brought to bear in this chamber as well. And can I also send my condolences to the family of Jeff Capes. As a child of the 80s, I remember what a legend he was, and his shot put record, I believe, is still unbroken. And can I also take this opportunity to once again point the House to the call for views launched by the Modernisation Committee last week. And tomorrow, new limitations on MPs' second jobs come into force. The House will remember that before recess, we voted to remove the exemptions on paid advocacy roles, and I wanted to give members time to adjust to these new rules, hence why they're coming in force tomorrow. This was a manifesto commitment, and we're determined to restore trust in politics, raising standards and delivering on our manifesto commitments. He raises again the issue of winter fuel payments, and I do just once again gently remind him that the equality impact assessment we published, which we weren't required to do, but we were forthcoming with it, and we brought forward to this House, which I don't think would have happened under his government, the full vote on these requirements in this House, and they were passed clearly by this place. He asks about Chogham and the Prime Minister's visit to Chogham. I can confirm that there will be a statement from the Foreign Secretary next week about that and other matters, and I look forward to him raising some of those issues there. But I'm also, the issue of reparations is an important one, and I'm glad that he's raised it, because we do recognise the horrific impacts and the understandable and ongoing strength of feeling across the Commonwealth and other communities about these issues. But he's right, our positions on reparations hasn't changed, and we are at this conference this week, we're committed to working with our Commonwealth partners on the issues, the very pressing issues that we are facing today, and looking forward to the future and not looking to the past. He raises the issue of campaigning in the United States and elsewhere. I note that he wants a full debate on that, but then at the same time he's also questioning why we're offering full general debates on issues. So I'm not sure whether he wants a general debate or doesn't want a general debate. But look, campaigning abroad happens in every election, and people do this in a personal capacity as well, he knows. But I do think, Mr Speaker, it is a bit rich, isn't it, really, coming from the party opposite. I mean, there would be leaders who've spent weeks debating and arguing over who would vote or who wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. And the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, went to the Republican National Convention and spent her time there discrediting the sitting president.
Well, just to say the others aren't MPs, by the way, if you weren't listening. Come on, relax.
So I feel it is a bit rich, really, Mr. Speaker. It is for the American people to decide who their next president is, and this government is committed and determined to work with whoever wins that election. He then raises issues of business, which I'll happily come on to, because today, Mr. Speaker, actually marks our 30th sitting day since we won that landslide general election victory. And in that time, we've introduced 20 bills. That's 20 bills in 30 sitting days, over half of our King's Speech programme introduced already. I will remind him that is way more than the coalition Conservative government managed in the whole of 2010, the last time we had a change of government. We've passed our first Labour Act in 14 years. We've made 34 statements to Parliament. That's more than one a day. And there's still much more to come, and I'm sure he wants to know about it, on planning, on border control, on education, on mental health, crime and policing, Great British Rail, the Hillsborough Law, buses, and much, much more. And I have to say that he and I both know, because we both sat through the last Parliament, others didn't, and we both know that at the end of the last Parliament, this really was a zombie Parliament, clocking off early 7 out of 10 days over the last year, because they'd run out of ideas and they couldn't agree on what to do and when, and so they did nothing, and they dithered and delayed on their own flagship legislation, and we're getting on with delivering some of those things that they failed to do. For example, this morning, the Football Regulator Bill, they long promised. We've introduced it, strengthened fans and for financial sustainability in the game. We're delivering where they didn't. The Renters' Rights Bill that they long planned and never fulfilled, we've taken that forward. And Martin's Law, perhaps the most disingenuous of them all, promised to be introduced by the summer by the then Prime Minister the day before he called a general election, knowing full well that he wasn't going to be able to introduce it at all. We've brought it in. So in our 30 sitting days, quite frankly, we brought more change to this country than they did in 14 sorry years. And I mean, if the shadow leader really wants to look at an effective use of time, he might ask what his own party's been doing for the last few months, because it seems to have taken 3.5 months to whittle 5 candidates down to just 2. Not that anyone has particularly noticed. Although I think it is fair to say, Mr. Speaker, that we did see a few signs of life in recent days. They've finally shown a bit of oomph, a bit of what it's all about to be the party of opposition. They've taken a really principled stance to stand against the abolition of hereditary peers.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, I visited Keach Hospice that serves many residents in Luton North. As always, it was inspiring to see the care that they offer children and adults at a time of need. But it is not without its challenges. Whether through time for debate or through the new government's NHS consultation, how can we best ensure that funding for hospice care is given the attention it so richly deserves?
Well, she raises a very important issue that's been raised a number of times in these sessions, and we want a society where every person receives high quality, compassionate care at the end of their lives. And I think it is really a crying shame that the hospice sector relies so heavily on fundraising and voluntary support, and we will continue to work closely with the sector to make sure it can survive and thrive going forward.
Goldman, the Liberal Democrat spokesman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the words of the Leader of the House when she emphasises the Modernisation Committee's call for views. I'm sure that she, like me, has had many members of the House sidle up to her and say, oh, wouldn't it be good if we could change this particular aspect of the way that Parliament does things? And I'm pleased to direct them now to the Modernisation Committee's website, where they can submit their own views about that, and I encourage them to do so. I also thank the Leader of the House for bringing forward the business programme, as usual, and note the several days that have been given to debate the budget, which I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to. I'm not totally convinced that the Shadow Leader of the House and the party in opposition will be looking forward to debate it. They did, of course, have the opportunity, if reports in the media are to be believed, to change the timetable for their leadership elections so that the new leader might be able to give a statement and respond to the budget themselves, but it appears that they weren't so keen on that. Perhaps they weren't so confident of their own ability to respond to the budget. We shall see what happens. Of course, so many of the questions from honourable members across the House are regularly being answered by the government with a rather frustrating wait until the budget. While many of us understand there is good reason why detailed responses often can't be given ahead of the budget, time is ticking on and the seasons don't really seem to care very much about the government's timetable. Mr. Speaker, winter is fast approaching. But our NHS doesn't have the funding it needs to fully support local health services. According to figures from the House of Commons Library from work commissioned by the Liberal Democrats, across the country, 12-hour wait times at A&E have been going up and up. Now, I'm extremely worried about what that means for my constituents in Chelmsford. I'm sure other members will also be very concerned. The Royal College of Emergency Medicine has previously estimated that long A&E delays led to around 14,000 excess deaths last year. That's 268 people dying unnecessarily every week because they are waiting too long to be seen. It really is a matter of life and death. That's unacceptable. Yes, it's another damning indictment of the previous Conservative government's failure to get a grip on healthcare in this country. But it's what we do right now that really matters. And make no mistake, it is a choice, and we can choose to fix it. While the Liberal Democrats are calling for a wider funding boost for the whole of the NHS, we cannot keep lurching from winter crisis to winter crisis. So will the Leader of the House call on the Chancellor to create a new ring-fenced fund that takes account of the average emergency winter funding for the NHS?
Don't just go. One of us is sitting down. It's certainly not going to be me. It's 2 minutes. It's almost three. Well, it's gone 3 minutes. Just to say, just because I'm trying, don't get louder and quicker. Just try and stop me, please. You're coming to an end now. Do it very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Chancellor set aside money to be spent on building up winter resilience and winter-proofing the NHS?
Well, can I thank her for that and echo her comments about the Modernisation Committee, which really has captured a lot of interest in this place and would encourage people to do that. I mean, she's absolutely right about the Conservative Party's leadership race, and it is, I think, a matter for them as to why they are not putting forward a new leader to respond to the budget. And judging on the last few weeks, we seem to have seen quite a lot of softballing from the current acting leader and deputy leader at these exchanges. So perhaps if they weren't in their own rabbit hole of oblivion, they might have presented somebody better to come to that next week. But she's absolutely right. You know, this country is, and public services in this country are in deep crisis after 14 years of failure and underinvestment. My husband is an A&E doctor as well, so I know all too well of the crisis facing our NHS this winter and every winter we have seen in recent years. That's why the Health Secretary has taken very quick action, first of all, to end the doctor strikes, which was causing so much additional stress to the NHS. He's taken early steps to ensure we've got extra appointments. He's taking a huge amount of work to bring down waiting lists and to foresee some of those winter crises. But there's no question that the difficult choices we are going to face, given the woeful economic inheritance that we've got in this budget coming forward are going to be difficult. But there is hope ahead. We will get the economy growing again. We will get that investment into our public services, and we will fix the economy for the long term.
Marsha de Cordova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my apologies for earlier. Many of my constituents in Battersea have written to me concerned about Israel's ongoing siege in northern Gaza. The scale of suffering and loss of life is enormous, and they are calling on the government to use all its levers to actually take some action, including suspending any trade negotiations with Israel. We need an arms suspension as well as a ban on all goods that have been produced in settlement. So can we have a government statement on the tangible actions that are going to be taken so that we can bring an end to this awful, awful suffering?
Well, can I thank her for that question? She's absolutely right. The people of Gaza have endured 12 months of this conflict and are suffering from a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. There are still over 100 hostages being held by Hamas in truly awful conditions, and that's why this government is absolutely clear that the fighting must stop now. We need that immediate ceasefire. We need a release of all the hostages and much more aid and support getting into Gaza and that long-term peace and stability. The government is working at pace with our international partners to achieve these ends, and there should be a statement on this in the coming days.
Chair of the Backbench Committee, Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm looking forward to the magical words in future weeks. Business to be nominated by the Backbench Business Committee. And can I urge, I think there's one remaining member of the Backbench Business Committee to be appointed, so that prevents us from meeting. So can I urge the House to get on with that particular aspect? Could I also suggest to the Leader that it would be very helpful if she announced the business to be held in Westminster Hall at these sessions, because that would elevate the aspect of Westminster Hall to our debates. And of course today we've seen the Charity Commission publish a damning report on mermaids, that they've concluded that their poor governance has led to mismanagement. This has serious implications following their statutory inquiry into not only them but other charities that look after vulnerable children. So could we have a statement from the government about what action it's going to take to ensure that these vulnerable children are protected and that charities do not mismanage the resources they're provided with?
Hear, hear. Very good.
Well, can I thank him for that? And I do also look forward to being able to announce in future weeks business decided by the Backbench Business Committee. And he might want to have a word with the shadow leader about the importance of providing time for general debates and backbench business debates, something that he seems to think is not of interest to this House, and that's why the government's provided time for some of those debates in the absence of the Backbench Business Committee being formed. And he makes a good point. There are some really good debates happening in Westminster Hall next week on online safety, on the funding of children's hospices, on the readiness of the NHS this winter, a number of issues that do get raised in these sessions regularly. And I hear what he says about the report into mermaids, and I will make sure that if there is not a forthcoming statement, that he gets a response from the relevant department.
Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Civil servants in the DWP have received what only can be described as a derisory pay offer. Indeed, the individuals on the lowest grades are being discriminated against. Can we have a debate in government time to discuss the value of our civil servants and how we can address their wages, terms and conditions? And can she urge parliamentary colleagues, the ministers, the relevant ministers who can get involved, get around the table with the PCS union and try and resolve this dispute?
Well, can I thank him for raising that? And I have to say that in the short time that I've been in government, I've seen firsthand the really exemplary work that our civil service do every day. And they do it quietly and secretly much of the time, and they don't get the credit for the work that they do. So it's great of him to raise this on the floor of the House. He's absolutely right. It's up to individual departments to negotiate with their trade unions on pay rises. I think the average pay award this year is 5%, but he's right that working together with our partners in the trade union movement, we can end industrial action and we can support people getting higher wages and better working conditions.
Let's just come to the father of the house, so Edward Leigh.
For a number of years I've served on the programme boards of restoration renewal, and the existential threat to this building is fire. And I've raised on a number of occasions the importance of installing a water mist system. And others, Mr. Speaker, have raised this issue too, I know that. And also the issue of more fire doors and making sure they're all shut. This is such an important issue, I don't demand an immediate answer now, but will the Leader of the House take this issue away and try and persuade the authorities that rather than have endless debates on we should decant or not, we've got to protect this building and have a water mist system. These modern systems are so designed that you do not damage paintings and all the rest of it, but they could save the building.
Can I thank you for that question? And all I can say is, lucky him for sitting on the programme board for such a long time. But in all seriousness, I know safety of this building and keeping people at work here safe is of paramount importance to the House authorities, to myself, to Mr. Speaker, and it's something that he and I discuss regularly. And he's absolutely right. We've got to address these issues, and I hope that he will continue to offer his advice and thoughts on the matters through the programme board in the coming months. I'm not sure if he's going to be nominated by his party to do that, but I hope they do.
Butler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Leader of the House, in Brent Central, the average private rent has increased by an eye-watering 33% in my borough, £2,121 on average a month. We have the highest eviction rate in England and Wales, and I'm inundated, I'm sure lots of members of this House are inundated with emails about mould and disrepair. The government's Renters' Right Bill is very much welcome. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that we need to do more to talk about rent controls?
Well, she raised an important matter to her constituency, and she's absolutely right that the Renters' Rights Bill, which has finally come forward and had its second reading under this government, a strengthened bill, a much strengthened bill from the previous one, ending no-fault evictions and giving renters and tenants more enhanced rights than they will have had in a generation, and tackling some of the issues around quality and mould and some of those issues too, will be a really important bill going forward, and I'm sure she'll want to get really stuck into the debate as it progresses through the House.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. North Lincolnshire Council has just published proposals for a green growth zone, which will help revitalise the local economy, provide engineering jobs, and also help find young people a route into the renewable energy sector. Since this would appear to fit perfectly with the government's growth agenda, could the leader arrange for a statement or preferably a debate in government time when we can consider green growth zones for across the country?
Well, I'm pleased that he's welcoming the green growth zone in his constituency, and he's absolutely right to point out that this government's mission to clean energy superpower by 2030 is not just important in terms of those climate targets, but absolutely critical to creating jobs of the future and growth and giving us that energy security that we so desperately need. I'm sure that this would make an important debate, perhaps for the backbench business when it is up and running, hopefully imminently, and if not, I will certainly look at his request.
Andy McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The UK was right to suspend direct arms export licences to Israel, the use of which risks being in breach of international humanitarian law, yet continues to deliver F-35 components via the global supply chain. I've asked many times if the government will negotiate an end-use agreement with international partners to end the supply of F-35s to Israel, and been told in a written answer that the US government manages the global supply chain. Sadly, that does not address the issue. So, can we have a statement from the Foreign Secretary on what discussion he has had with US counterparts to end the supply of F-35s to Israel from the global supply chain?
Well, this government has taken more action than many in terms of suspending licences for arms exports, because we are upholding international law and we are following the legal advice that we have received, and that's why we have suspended around 30 licences to the Israel Defence Forces for arms that may be used in the current conflict and would be in breach of international law. I am anticipating that the Foreign Secretary will come to the House, hopefully next week, with a further update on the Middle East.
John Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In a righteous echo of St Matthew's Gospel, the elimination of vicious, violent criminal Chris Carber reminds us that those who live by weapons die by the same. But further to yesterday's statement, there are real doubts about the fitness for purpose of the CPS and the AOPC. And so can we have a debate whether those organisations become so infected by kind of bourgeois, liberal, doubt-fuelled virtue signalling, they've lost the will to defend the law-abiding majority from a criminal, wicked minority?
Well, he will be aware that the Home Secretary did come to this House yesterday, where she did announce new steps that we will be taking to protect armed police officers in the future, and it's welcome that we've got cross-party support for those measures. Some of those measures will be included in forthcoming legislation from the Home Department, so I'm sure we will have ample time to debate them further then.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Kinship care is vital in keeping kids who cannot be with their parents, with family and friends, where possible, is often for the very best. In Portsmouth, it is estimated there are 560 kinship carers, like Carol, who I met recently in Pausgrove. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, kinship carers receive less money per week than foster carers. Would the Leader of the House allocate time for a debate to look at pay parity between foster carers and kinship carers?
Well, she raises a really important issue, which I know is of great significance to many members in this House. The role that kinship carers play to our society is often underestimated and undervalued, and that is something that we should all want to put right. Our manifesto made clear that every child should have a loving and secure home, and that's why we are determined to include kinship care and others in the work that we're doing to make sure that every child does have that supportive home.
Thank you,
Madam Deputy Speaker. Amongst local farmers, reports abound that the government intends to cut the farming budget by over £100 million. This is compounded by the reality that the full Farm Recovery Fund and the Internal Drainage Board funds have not been distributed, despite farmers facing appallingly wet weather over the last few months. So will the Leader of the House consider committing one day of the budget debate to food security and supporting our farmers?
Well, we have recently had a debate on farming, I think, under the opposition debate time as well. She raises important issues which do get raised here regularly. This government supports our farmers, supports our food security, recognises the difficult period that farmers have had, especially with climate change as well, and that's why we want to support our resilience going forward and make sure we tackle some of the issues around climate change. But there will be ample time in the budget debates for these matters to be debated, and I'd encourage her to put in to speak.
Charlotte Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The latest statistics on drug-related deaths from the ONS make for horrifying reading, with the rate of drug poisoning deaths in 2023 double the rate in 2012. Just under half of all drug poisoning deaths registered in 2023 were confirmed to involve an opiate, while 1,118 deaths involved cocaine, which is over 30% more than the previous year and represents the 12th consecutive annual rise. How can the Leader of the House facilitate us coming together as a Parliament and with the relevant departments to produce a long overdue, grown-up, evidence-based drugs policy framework rooted in harm reduction?
Well, she's right to point out the very serious and harmful effects of drug addiction and the number of deaths that it causes, and many of us will have been affected by such tragedies either for our constituents or our own loved ones as well. She raises an important matter. There are health questions in November, but I think the topic that she raises might be one that would be considered by the Backbench Business Committee or for an adjournment debate.
Vanilla Wilson. Deputy Speaker, there are members and right honourable members across this House who are all agreed that it is right for this House to consider the issue of assisted dying. However, for many of us who are deeply torn on this issue, who want to look in depth at the practical, moral, ethical and legal considerations, we do not feel that a private member's bill with only 5 hours debate, where will have to take a vote on second reading, is the right vehicle to do so. The Prime Minister committed to government time on this issue, so could I urge the Leader of the House in due course to bring forward legislation in government time with proper pre-legislative scrutiny and impact analyses, so that if we are to take such a grave decision, that we've got all of the resources at our disposal to do so.
Well, look, I recognise the difficult issue that she raises and how many members are struggling and considering these issues in this way. These matters, such as assisted dying, are matters of conscience. They've always traditionally been through private members' bills because the government doesn't have a view, and there will be a free vote for the government, so there is no government time. So there will be a second reading, which would be the same length of time as there would be for other bills, but there will be lots of other opportunities for these matters to be debated, and she could apply for other debates as well and take forward other issues. But it is a matter for the House to decide, and we will take that forward on the basis of what the House does decide.
Claire Morris.
May I add my voice to that of my good and honourable friend, the member for Warrington North, in respect of the ONS report released yesterday, showing that 5,448 deaths related to drug poisoning were registered in England and Wales. Once again, the areas of greatest deprivation are disproportionately affected, the North East region, including my constituency, the hardest hit. Now, every one of these preventable tragedies impacts families, friends and colleagues. But as chair of the Drugs, Alcohol and Justice all-party group, I've tabled EDM 302. I'd like to draw the House's attention to this and to this public health crisis. Will the Leader of the House urge ministers to meet with the APPG officers and treatment providers? And could we have a debate in government time on this very important issue?
Well, he's absolutely right to say that health inequalities are inextricably linked with all other inequalities, and those trends are very clear to see. And the report out yesterday on drug-related deaths is one that should serve as a wake-up call on these matters, and it could be an absolutely devastating outcome for any family for their loved one to die in this way. Given that it's already been raised twice in business question just today, I'm sure that there would be a lot of interest were he to apply for a debate.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Leader join me in wishing the very best to my humble constituent Jack Jarvis, who's an Army veteran, and his team, Adam Radcliffe, David Bruce and Nutty Edwards, both from the Royal Marines, as they train in my constituency for a world record rowing attempt from New York to Southampton in aid of the veterans charity Heads Up. Can we have a statement, therefore, on mental health services from either the Health Secretary or the Defence Secretary? And will she wish my constituents the best of luck in their attempt to raise this money?
Well, I'd be delighted to wish his constituents. Look, that sounds like quite an ambitious challenge to row across the Atlantic for such a worthy cause as the charity Heads Up, which I know well and does really important work. He will have heard that I have announced a general debate on Monday on veterans and the work that they do, and I'm sure that would be a really good opportunity for him to raise that again then.
Paul Wall.
I welcome the introduction of a beefed-up football governance bill and thank the leader in part for all her hard work in opposition on beefing up that proposal. But can I also pass on a message from the co-chairman of Rochdale AFC, who says he'd love to host the new football regulator as part of the redevelopment of Rochdale's ground, and wouldn't it be perfect for the North West, the beating heart of our national game, to be host to the football regulator?
Well, can I thank you for that? And I am really pleased that the Football Regulator Bill is being introduced to the House of Lords today. This is a strengthened bill. It's a bill that we promised, the previous government promised, but failed to deliver. But it will put fans at the heart of our football. He says from a secretary, he did. The opposition chief whip really did try, and it was a cross-party effort, but the election was called perhaps a bit too early for that bill, as well as some of his colleagues at the time. So it didn't come to pass. We've strengthened it. We're putting fans at the heart of football. The honourable gentleman will be pleased to know that the government is committed that the football regulator will be hosted in Greater Manchester. But he might want to fight with me and the Culture Secretary as to whether it's in Wigan, Manchester or Rochdale.
I'm not sure I'm endorsing fighting at the dispatch. Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Glastonbury in Somerton is home to wonderful cider, with producers like Tricky Cider in Langport, Harry Cider in Long Sutton and Borough Hill Cider near Kingsbury Episcopi. Cider produces around £2 million of value for pubs each year. However, damaging business rates are threatening their future. So can we have a debate in government time about the benefits of reforming business rates on pubs and hospitality?
Well, I do once a year go to Glastonbury and I occasionally have some of the local cider while I'm there, so I can confirm they do produce really good quality cider in the southwest of England. It's one of our great exports and one of our great drinks in this country. I'm sure that these issues will be a matter that she might want to raise in the number of days we've got on the budget debate next week, and I look forward to her doing that then.
Jo Platt.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I often say, in order to move forward, we need to look back. And with that, will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating North West Computer Museum in Leigh, not only for showcasing the history of computing, but also inspiring the next generation with education and new tech? And will the Leader advise how best we acknowledge organisations such as this, so that we continue to inspire the next generation of technological innovators?
Yeah. Well, local museums like the North West Computer Museum in her constituency do a brilliant work in showcasing the best of this country's past so that we can drive forward to the future. And I know, as a near neighbour of the Honourable Lady, what an important role that computer technology has played in the history of Leigh and Atherton and indeed Greater Manchester.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Recent events at the West Midlands Fire Authority regarding failures of governance, leadership, financial discrepancies and staff grievances highlight some of the really deep-rooted and troubling problems, and I'm afraid there are too many unanswered questions. So will this government ensure that there's an independent and transparent public inquiry to ensure that the West Midlands Fire Authority meets the obligations and standards that my residents and people right across the West Midlands rightly expect and deserve?
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about the poor findings of the fire service in the West Midlands. It's a much needed service that local people should be able to rely on in those times of need. I don't have details of it with me now, but I will ensure that the relevant minister gets back to her as soon as possible about what can be done.
Leigh Pitcher.
Deputy Speaker. Last week I had the pleasure of welcoming amazing students from Hayfield and Hill House schools to Parliament on educational visits. In the same week I was immensely proud to see New College Ilkley awarded Centre of Excellence status by the Leadership Foundation and Hayfield School rank amongst the top 15 schools in South Yorkshire. Will the Minister join me in congratulating Hayfield and New College on these blooming brilliant achievements? And will she encourage schools across the country to take advantage of the excellent educational visits that we offer here in Parliament?
Well, I'm delighted to join him in congratulating Hayfield College on their blooming good achievements there. And he's absolutely right to highlight the fantastic educational programme offered by Parliament. I think it's really important that we do educate the next generation on our democracy, on their role as citizens and the important role that Parliament plays in our place.
Clive Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, Sky News reported the government is set to receive £1.5 billion windfall from Octopus Energy, just weeks after the Chancellor announced a £1.4 billion cut to winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners, a cut which Wales Older People's Commissioner has said in the past week will cost thousands of lives. The windfall provides an opportunity for the government to reverse their policy, do the right thing to ensure that millions of the most vulnerable in our society get the vital support that they need. Therefore, will the government make time for a debate in this House on the opportunity that this windfall gives us?
Well, I might just gently say to not totally believe everything that he hears on the news. But look, he raises an important matter. People are facing challenges this winter and have faced over many years in paying their rising energy costs, and taking the very difficult decision that this government has taken on means testing the winter fuel payments is not one that we wanted to take. But we did inherit this huge black hole, not just for this financial year, but for year after year after year. And one of the things that we've had to do is fix the economy, fix the foundations, put us back on that economic stability, because the truth of the matter is when the economy crashes, when interest rates go sky high, when costs and inflation gets out of control, it's pensioners on fixed incomes who pay the heaviest price for that, and that's why we've had to take the difficult decision we have.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Data released by the National Records of Scotland reported this week records that male life expectancy in my constituency of Western Bartonshire is the second lowest in the country, and Scotland continues to have lower life expectancy than England and Wales. Low life expectancy is strongly linked to deprivation and 17 years of SNP failure. Can the Leader of the House arrange an urgent debate on how this government can work constructively with the Scottish Government to tackle the causes of deprivation and enhance the life chances of my constituents of Western Bartonshire?
Well, he's absolutely right to raise the issue of male life expectancy in Scotland, and the figures that he raises are concerning and worrying. This government is committed to work with the Scottish Government to tackle some of the challenges that the country is facing. That's why we convened our first Council of Regions and Nations in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago. He'll be aware that Scottish questions are next week, and he might want to raise it further then.
Davis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. You will know the importance of Uckfield Hospital. It is, of course, a hospital that you have previously represented and your constituents enjoy the local use of. Would the leader make time to bring forward a debate on community and district hospitals? At the dispatch box, the Health Secretary spoke about the importance of local access, but I hear that Uckfield Hospital's elective surgery has been mothballed for for 6 months. Local staff are being sent elsewhere, and this flies in the face of the decisions that this government says that ICBs should be taking.
With a mention of Uckfield, I'll be listening to the answer very closely, please.
Well, I shall try and make sure it's a good one for you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Look, she's absolutely right to say that one of the key ways in which we can deal with the crisis in our NHS, and it is a very, very serious crisis that we face, is to get more services into communities so that people don't need to attend acute care at the wrong time, and that we can deliver that preventative community care model that the Health Secretary absolutely rightly points to. Unfortunately, I know I don't want to make this party political, but what we have inherited in terms of some of the hospital building programme, what was a work of fiction, and many promises made by the previous government didn't have any budget line allocated to them at all. But I know these are issues of high priority for the forthcoming budget, and I hope that she will get some of the answers she wants there.
Chris Webb.
Speaker, boxing effectively engages children and young people from deprived or marginalised backgrounds. Matchroom's chairman Eddie Hearn rightly says the thing about boxing is that everyone's welcome and there's no barrier for entry. Initiatives like Matchroom in the community, run by the passionate Alex Legavel, have impacted over 1,200 young people, collaborating with 22 sports providers and even saving a local boxing gym. They are truly transforming lives. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating the work of Matchroom in the community and permit a discussion in government time on the positive impact on amateur local boxing clubs?
Well, I absolutely will join him in congratulating Matchroom in the community and his constituency for the amazing work that they do. I know from a similar club in my own constituency, Moss Side Fire Boxing Club, of the really important work that is done in engaging young people who would otherwise not be engaged and would otherwise be causing problems elsewhere. And that's why this government is committed to supporting such youth services.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So many of my residents in rural Beverley and Holderness have benefited from the simply brilliant £2 bus fare. Could I ask, Madam Deputy Speaker, for a statement or debate as soon as possible after the budget, led by the Transport Secretary, on the future of the £2 bus fare, which has seen so many more of my residents able to get to work, be a full part of the community and meet members of their families?
Well, I'm glad his constituents are benefiting from the £2 bus fare, something which this government has said will continue to the end of this year for now, and I'm sure further announcements will be made in the coming days. And we're also bringing in the Better Buses Bill in this session to ensure that many more places can benefit from having a say and bus franchising in their local areas, which will keep fares lower for longer. And I'm sure that he will raise these issues in the budget debate next week.
Warren Just.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last night I met with the UCU Union Rep at the City of Wolverhampton College, which is in my constituency of Wolverhampton West. He raised concerns about the wages of teachers in further education being significantly less than the wages received by pre-16 education teachers, and about the general underinvestment in further education. Madam Deputy Speaker, these teachers in further education provide vocational training for electricians, bricklayers, plumbers, plasterers and IT technicians, to name but a few. Does the Leader agree that the skills agenda and further education go hand in hand, and will she please agree to meet with me or agree to a debate in the House to discuss fair funding for further education?
Well, he's absolutely right to raise this issue, which was raised with me by the Manchester College on a visit I recently did there as well. And the work that is done in our further educational institution is transforming lives. It's absolutely critical to the mission of this government to grow the economy and to provide opportunity for everybody everywhere. And that's why we are bringing forward a number of pieces of legislation to enhance further education, and hopefully there will be further announcements on this in due course.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday I was pleased to welcome the wonderful Dawn Dines and the Stamp Out Spiking charity to Parliament to showcase their awareness campaign that launches next Monday. Spiking is one of the most evil crimes. So can I ask the Leader of the House to arrange for the Home Secretary to make a statement to update the House on the progress being made to implement the previous government's anti-spiking strategy and what further steps this new government is going to take to stamp out this heinous crime?
Hear, hear, hear. Well, can I thank him for raising the important work of Stamp Out Spiking campaign. He's absolutely right. It is a blight in many of our town and city centres. Work has improved over recent years to reduce the number of people using this drug, but further work needs to be done, and I'm sure the Home Secretary will update the House in due course.
Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Next week, members of the European Pride Organisers Association will be voting on the hosts of Europride 2027. I am proud to be backing the only UK bid, Pride in Gloucestershire, to host that festival, including an opening ceremony at Gloucester Docks and a festival in Gloucester Park. Will the Leader of the House join me in encouraging members of IPOA to vote for Pride in Gloucestershire for Europride 2027? Thank you.
Well, I absolutely, wholeheartedly encourage all the committee members to vote for Pride in Gloucestershire. I'm sure it will really help to put Gloucester on the map and would bring a huge amount of interest and support to the local economy. As the MP for Manchester Pride, I know how important these events are, and I wish him and his town all the best with that.
Testamont.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In broad daylight in a public place, my constituent was attacked by a man who is well known to the police, and when he realised he was being videoed and the police were being called, he lashed out and then threatened to find my constituent, slit his throat and burn his house down. Early police advice was that my constituent, his name need never be disclosed, but now even the Somerset Police says his full name will have to be disclosed in court. He doesn't want to expose his family to the threats that were made, but this case will collapse without the protection of anonymity for victims. So can we have a debate on offering greater public protection to victims in court, thereby bolstering public confidence in policing and our court system? Thank you.
Well, this sounds like a really horrific incident in her constituency. I'm really sorry to hear it and hope she will pass on our best to her constituents. These issues have been raised many times. We've had many debates on them, and this government is committed to bringing forward a victims and sentencing bill in this session, where I think the issue of anonymity for victims will be widely discussed.
Andrew Pates.
Madam Deputy Speaker, David Lowndes is a hero of ours in Peterborough. For 51 years, he has chronicled life in our city as the snapper for the local paper. Just this last weekend, in rain and shine, I met David taking photos at the Diwali Festival and at the rededication of a war memorial. This year, his regular contract with the Peterborough Telegraph comes to an end. Will she join me in congratulating David on his contribution to our city and journalism, and will she help ensure we have time in this House to debate the value of good local journalists?
Yeah. Well, can I join him in congratulating David Lowndes on a very, very long career in local photo journalism? What an important role he and others like him play in capturing the moments, in telling the stories of our constituents and our communities and the things that we care most about. I'm sure that an application for a debate on the importance of local journalism would be one that would be very well attended were he to apply for one.
Sarah Ball.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Tomorrow is Northamptonshire Day, and I am very proud to represent the constituency of South Northamptonshire. Now, I'm also delighted to hear the announcement of a new bus route from Brackley to Northampton via Cyrisham. Would the Leader of the House agree that we need to really protect and enhance our bus services alongside the £2 bus fare, and agree to a debate in government time on this very important issue? Leader.
Well, I didn't know it was Northamptonshire Day, so that's a good thing for me to add to the diary for future years. But she raises the issue of reliable local bus routes, and she'll know that those have been decimated over recent years. The £2 bus fare has been an important marker in restoring that, but also this government is bringing forward a better buses bill, which will give local areas and local transport authorities more power to franchise and create the local bus services that people need to rely on.
Tim Rocker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was very pleased to hear the Leader of the House announce a debate on veterans next week. Will the Leader join me in commending the work of the Macclesfield Armed Forces and Veterans Breakfast Club, which I had the pleasure of visiting recently? Their efforts to support veterans by providing access to key services, helping to tackle social isolation within the community are invaluable.
Well, I'm delighted to join him in congratulating the important work of the Breakfast Club in his constituency that he's recently visited. This government is committed to supporting veterans. That's why I was really pleased to announce the debate on veterans next week, and he'll be pleased to know that the government's commitment to the Armed Forces Commissioner Bill will be imminently introduced.
Ben Obsi-Jeckley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Huntingdon, we have a swathe of new energy infrastructure developments. We already have the near 2,000-acre East Park Energy solar farm proposed near Great Staunton, and this government recently forced through the Envar incinerator on the edge of St Ives after an appeal from the developer. Over the past week, many constituents have written to me expressing their concerns about the proposed Warboys incinerator at the old brickworks, just 4 miles away from the Envar incinerator site, and placing the parishes of Warboys and Pidley-cum-Fenton between them. Would the Leader of the House make time in the parliamentary schedule for this House to discuss the impact the new energy infrastructure is having on the rural communities they are being imposed upon?
Well, can I thank him for raising that issue, which obviously is important to his constituent. This government makes no apology for taking quick action on ensuring that we have got the energy security, the energy supply of the future, with our commitment to a clean energy superpower by 2030. And that does bring with it some difficult decisions and some difficult challenges. We're mindful of community concern when it comes to these decisions, but we're not going to let that stand in our way of ensuring that once again we can have energy security, lower bills and energy supply for people of this country.
Kirsty Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Across the country, retailers on our high streets are increasingly worried about rising retail crime and antisocial behaviour. And I met recently with business owners in Bathgate to discuss their concerns and raise awareness of the Protection of Workers Act in Scotland, which was introduced after a long campaign by the cooperative movement. Can the Leader of the House make a statement informing the House when it can expect a bill to make assault of shop workers a specific offence in England and Wales?
Well, shoplifting continues to increase at unacceptable levels and is causing huge issues for local shop workers and for those running retail outlets. And she's absolutely right to raise this issue. She will know that under the previous government there was an effective immunity on those shoplifting because the under £200 there were no prosecutions made. This government is committed to bringing in a new offence of assaulting a retail worker, and that will be in the forthcoming crime and policing bill, which I hope will be in the coming weeks and months ahead.
Stafford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Colin and Corinne Hall are residents in the Borden part of my constituency, and they are being evicted by the MOD from their property, along with a number of other residents in the area. Could we have a statement from the Secretary of State for Defence about the treatment that the MOD does to its non-military tenants? And this is just an example of how the Defence Infrastructure Organisation is not prioritising Borden, and can we have a debate in government time on how the DIO handles its responsibilities to local communities?
Well, thank him for raising what is obviously an important issue for his constituents, and Colin and Corinne Hall in their circumstances as well. It's not one that I'm familiar with. He will know that I just recently announced that there will be a debate on the floor of the House on Monday on supporting veterans, which will have the Defence Ministers present at that debate. He may want to raise it there, but I shall certainly raise it with them anyway.
We have around a dozen members and I only have a few minutes, so let's try and be as short and sharp as we can. I come to Laura Kirksmith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week I joined Rabbi Neil James and Father Stuart Owen on a walk through my constituency to mark the Jewish Festival of Sukkot and to thank and raise funds for local organisations that support people in need, people of all faiths. Will the Leader of the House grant a debate on how we can support and encourage interfaith understanding, dialogue and action, of which this walk was a really powerful example?
Well, can I thank you for raising that, and also pass on my thanks to Rabbi James and those who've come together in her constituency of High Wycombe to deal with these issues. And she's absolutely right to call for interfaith communities to come together, and I'm sure she'll continue to do that in her own constituency.
Claire Young.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When the Cineworld in Yates opened in 2015, it was a big day for the town, the result of years of campaigning by former MP Steve Webb. Sadly, the cinema has recently closed its doors, one of many cinemas across the country who are unable to keep up with rising costs. One of the key burdens facing these businesses is the current business rate system, which leaves them paying more than they can afford. So, will the Leader of the House agree to give us a debate in government time on the need to reform business rates and how a new system could benefit local cinemas?
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the closure of Cineworld in her constituency. We will have several days of debate on the budget starting next week, and I'm very, very confident the matter of business rates, as it always does, will be high on those agendas for those debates.
Mark Stewart.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of my constituents, David Gold, has been in touch with me to state that a year ago he was really struggling to get a GP appointment. Now, he went directly to the hospital, sought their advice, and eventually got that appointment, but he was diagnosed with stage 3 bowel cancer as a result. We know how important it is to get a diagnosis early if you have cancer. The GP practice in question spoke to me. One of their employees said that, frankly, in their 35 years in the service in primary healthcare, they had never seen it in such a poor or sorry state. Will the Leader of the House grant an urgent debate in government time to get GPs the resources they need to offer appointments quickly?
Well, I'm really sorry to hear of my honourable friend's constituent's case. This government is committed to introducing an extra 40,000 GP appointments per week by the end of this Parliament, and that is work that is underway already and the Health Secretary is leading, and I hope that means that these situations don't happen again.
Jim Shannon.
Deputy Speaker, whilst it's common for us to think that freedom of religious belief issues and violations do not occur in the West, they actually do. Recently, the Brescia, the Roma, an evangelical church in Italy, has been embroiled in a legal battle regarding its place of worship. The Italian tax agency denied the church tax exemptions granted to other religious institutions on the grounds that its place of worship, in their words, did not exhibit sufficiently religious architectural features. Despite favourable rulings from lower courts, the Italian Supreme Court ruled against the church, claiming it was liable for commercial taxes. The church, represented by ADF, has now taken its case to the European Court of Human Rights. This case is discriminatory. Can I ask the Leader of the House this question? Will she join me in raising concern about these violations of freedom of religion or belief, and will the Right Honourable Lady contact the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to raise this issue with its counterparts in Italy? Thank you so much.
Well, yet again, he raises an important matter of freedom of religion of belief in these sessions, and I will certainly get him answers to that question. He might also want to know, he's previously raised with me the case of Jimmy Leigh, and the Foreign Secretary has raised that on his trip to China last week.
Sean Woodcock.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Banbury FM in my constituency provides news, music and information services that are in many ways much better than the service provided by larger existing FM licence holders. Unfortunately, Ofcom's effective veto on stations obtaining FM licences means that it and many other independent local radio stations are only accessible via digital platforms, depriving parts of society, especially the elderly or the isolated, access to their services. Will the leader commit to a debate on improving access to FM frequencies for independent radio stations and the potential for Ofcom to provide on-demand licences?
Well, local radio stations play a really important part for their local community, and I'm sure if he was to apply for an adjournment debate, it would be very well attended.
McNally.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The SNP government has botched its attempts to deliver a national care service in Scotland, with significant concerns from key stakeholders, trade unions, care organisations and now the withdrawal of support from local government. Will my right honourable friend make time in the near future for a statement outlining the Department of Health and Social Care's preliminary discussions with stakeholders so that the House can be assured that the National Care Service in England moves forward with the support of staff, service users and other relevant bodies and does not make the same shambolic mistakes as has been made in Scotland?
Well, social care is a devolved matter, and he will know, as he rightly says, that social care in Scotland is at breaking point because the SNP plans there have failed, and really there is a national care service in name only. He may wish to raise these in the forthcoming health or Scottish questions.
Graham Down.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Despite a healthy number of large supermarkets and other suppliers in the city of Dunfermline, research by a group of my constituents has found that petrol prices are consistently up to 5 pence per litre higher than the same suppliers less than 10 miles away, harming small businesses and individuals alike. Can the leader suggest a way to examine this clustering of prices to ensure businesses and individuals are being treated fairly?
Well, he's absolutely right, and the Competition and Markets Authority has found that competition between fuel retailers has weakened, and that has had a detrimental effect on constituents like his, as he outlines. I would suggest, actually, I think he would get strong backing for either a backbench business or Westminster Hall debate on this important matter.
Andy McKay.
Madam Speaker, and like last week, I shall heed your request for speed. Rosendale is the only local authority area in the north without any sort of rail station, any sort of commuter link. Something I might have mentioned this house before. This leaves my constituents cut off for opportunity, constrains the growth of East Lancashire despite years of hard work by the Borough Council, supports the County Council and myself, and excellent deliverable plans in the form of the Valley City Rail Link. Will the leader agree to a debate on the delivery of this link in the context of a Northern Rail strategy?
Well, as a nearby MP, I know all too well how poorly served Rossendale and Rawtenstall are by transport links, and I support his calls for getting better transport links to his constituency. The government is currently reviewing all of this, but we are absolutely committed to supporting better Northern Rail links.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Women affected by the changes to the state pension age continue to wait for clarity on the compensation recommended by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman in their March report. I appreciate the state that public finances have been left in, and I acknowledge the complexity of this issue, but many of my constituents in Pendle and Clitheroe are concerned that justice is being further delayed. Can we have a statement from the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions on the Government's plans to respond to the report, and may MPs be given the opportunity to debate its findings and next steps?
Well, he will know that the Ombudsman report was published in March. It is a serious report and it does require serious consideration by the government. And I know this will be frustrating, but ministers are doing that actively as we speak. And of course, once they are ready to do so, they will be forthcoming to this House with a full response.
Perrin Moon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Critical minerals are essential to our transition away from fossil fuels. Virtually 100% of the UK's critical minerals needs are imported from places as far-flung as South America, the Congo, China and Australasia. Yet, despite that, there are vast deposits of tin, lithium, manganese and tungsten here in the UK, a truly damning indictment of the race to the bottom economics of the party opposite. Would the Leader of the House agree to a debate in government time on domestic critical mineral production?
Well, he raises such an important issue because critical minerals are vital to our future technology and economy. Phones, wind turbines, cars, fighter jets, you name it, they require them. And I think if he were to apply for an adjournment debate, he would get one.
And your patience has been noted. James Asser.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The East London Gymnastics Centre in Beckton is a grassroots facility well used by local people, community sports groups, but also contains national facilities used by Team GB and some of our Olympians. The facility has now been sold by its owner to a housing developer and faces imminent closure despite a vigorous local campaign and the impact that's going to have on our national training facilities. Would the Leader of the House look at what opportunities we have to debate grassroots sport and what measures we can put in place to protect facilities like this in the future?
Yeah. Well, last but certainly no means least, Madam Deputy Speaker, and this is a very worrying development in his constituency, and I thank him for raising it. Our Team GB gymnasts and other gymnasts are the pride of our country and have always done very well, especially in recent Olympics and other games. So I shall certainly raise this important matter with the relevant minister and make sure he gets a reply.
Thank you. With over 50 contributions, no doubt many constituencies have been well represented. I'll allow the front bench to shuffle over.